Hey, it's Carrie, and I would love if you shared your story with us. You are listening to Camouflage Beauty, a podcast of shared experiences for military and veteran women. Hello, it is me again, and thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Camouflage Beauty. As always, I have another amazing guest for you today. So today we're going to talk about the dark side of service. Unfortunately, for many years, we have been trying to eradicate trauma, specifically in the form of military sexual trauma. And my guest today will share her story, her firsthand account of what she experienced while wearing uniform with this unfortunate but very relevant topic. So I'm going to bring her on now so she can introduce herself and tell us more about her story. Hello, how are you?
Hello, everyone.
I'm so glad to have you. Can you tell the listeners a bit about you, just a little about yourself?
So my name is Dr. Deandra Poe. Most people nowadays, as I'm still getting very used to my doctor title, just call me Dr. D. That's my unofficial title. But let's see, what about me? Born and raised in Jersey. That's where I left the small little town of Woodbury, New Jersey. As people think of New Jersey as like, brick city.
Yes,
Now I was from like the cornfields of Jersey.
Wait, they have cornfields in Jersey?
Yes. I think they just don't understand the garden part of the Garden State. I'm from the garden part of the Garden State. But left home pretty early when I think I was 20 years old. My first experience as a military spouse, very young in the military. I have 3 amazing adult children. So I have all my children's birthdays are coming up soon. So I will soon have a 21-year-old, a 24-year-old, and a 26-year-old.
Oh, wow. Wow. Full adult children.
Full adult.
Oh my God. You don't even look like you can have a 21-year-old child.
I'm running away from Father Time. He's trying to catch up to me. I'm busy.
I got you.
So yes, and I'm an amazing husband who's still in the military right now. So I'm still part of my military community. It will always be a part of me. And I am currently in Baltimore. I am in B-More, The Wire.
So yes, we do associate Baltimore with The Wire the same way we associate Jersey with Brick City. But I digress.
Yeah.
So you have been a military spouse and a military member. And so you've been a part of our community for a long time. What made you actually want to join the military?
Well, it was because of my experience as a spouse. So long story short, my first marriage was kind of just very tumultuous. It was about growing, learning, and all of the nuances of pre 9/11 and then post 9/11. So I became an FRG leader while I was in the military because I was away from my family. I was young. I was moving around. I went to a different country. I sort of got immersed in the Family Readiness Group as a way to find my purpose and this heart that I had to serve people. So my military community became my family. And through an unfortunate incident during my FRG experience, I wound up meeting some wonderful people who encouraged me, myself, to go into the military. So as a result of one relationship ending, new relationships forged, and that is where the seed was planted for me to join the military.
Nice. So you came into the military, and walk us through that journey from basic training up until your first location.
So I actually left Fort Huachuca, Arizona when I was accepted. I started doing some digging and wanted to do ROTC. So a good friend of mine, again, he was a commander, my ex-husband's commander, said, you should go into the ROTC. So he started training me. I got a scholarship to go to George Washington University where I wanted to study law, to GW in DC. So there I packed my bags, age 30 years old. I think I was 29 or something at the time. Uh, 29, going on 30 years old, went to GW. However, again, there were some things that transpired where I wasn't allowed to commission from GW, so I transferred to Bowie State University, which is the oldest HBCU in Maryland, right back where I am right now. And I went on to get my sociology degree, my undergrad degree from Bowie State University, and I commissioned in 2011 at the age of 31 years old.
So you, first of all, shout out to the HBCU in Maryland and all HBCUs everywhere. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, so 31, you're right on the cusp of almost not being able to commission. So you really wanted to join us, and I'm so glad that you did. So from Bowie State in Maryland, now you decide to commission, and you get to your next location. Where is that location?
So from after I got out commissioned in 2011, I went to Knox to train like most officers in ROTC. We get that option to go train other cadets. So I went to Fort Knox and trained for a little bit. Then I went to Bolick at Fort Lee, and my first duty station was Fort Stewart. I was a dog-faced soldier.
And only people that have come across Fort Stewart may actually know what that means.
Oh man! And please don't even ask me to sing the song, because I promise I'm gonna have some real bad memories. I'm hearing that song every single morning. Ooh.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, I was a dog-faced soldier for a hot minute.
Yeah, nice. So tell us about that. So you're here now, right? And is it everything? First of all, is it everything you dreamed of, right? Because now you're no longer on the spouse's side. You're actually in this uniform, leading our members. And what is that like for you?
I mean, I think I went into it with the mindset that I had life experience, that I knew this community enough, at least in, again, the mental acrobats I was going in my life. I was ready to be the servant leader I was called to be. I was ready to be a change agent. I was like, yes, there were things that I saw as a spouse, in terms of domestic violence, in terms of the families being taken care of, soldiers being taken care of, that I really felt I was ready to change, or at least try to. So in my mindset, I'm going into this like excited. I knew that I was, an older cadet or new lieutenant. So again, there were some things about my experience that just shaped the way that I spoke, the way that I interacted with other leaders, and my experience. So I bought that life experience to going into my new duty station, and it was eye opening. It was a gut punch. It was a slap in the face. It was a lot of things that were the polar opposite of how I was going into this experience.
Yeah, unfortunately, it can be a uphill battle and a big climb. And so let's talk a bit about that. So you're at your first location. You are ready, bright eyed, bushy tail. You're like, I have this life experience. I am here to be a change agent to help out where I can. And unfortunately, that is not the story or the experience that you have. Could you give the listeners some details about that story?
Absolutely. So, getting there, like most officers and most duty stations, again, I can only speak from my experience. I want to make sure that I preface that this was my experience. And I'm not sure if they do this in every military post, because it certainly wasn't that way when I got to Hood, but we'll get to that later. We were put into a room with everyone else who was brand new to the post. You in process, you're giving your packet of information. You've got to go around to everywhere and in process and get your little stamp of approval. So in that, they have this, there's these norms, these cultural scripts, and I'm speaking to my social workers out there, of things that you are expected to do as an officer. And with that being said, one of them is, we don't need to hold your hand like, the privates. So you get to go around and do all your in processing on your own, show back up here at this appointed time tomorrow. For myself, that meant me and only, one or two other people, other officers that, are in processing, and going about our day. Well, getting to my unit, not really having anyone tracking me, not knowing where to go, what to do. Again, my 3 children were back in Maryland at the time and not there with me very early on for that very reason. So just getting to understand and know Post. I lived on Post by myself. Again, wasn't unfamiliar with the cultural norms, the customs and courtesies. However, the perception when I came there immediately, it was just hostile. Uh, Being sent off somewhere, not given an opportunity to understand what my job was going to be, where I was going to be put at as a leader, as a lieutenant. I think the first 30 days, I think I spent every day just still trying to figure out what was going on around me. And that just kind of started the downhill of my communication with my leadership.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, you're right. It is different at every location. And I think one of the strangest things in the military, for me anyway, and I think other people as well, but my experience, you come in and you feel like they have this figured out. You know, this is the military. Let's be honest. First of all, this is the world's greatest military, so it's
Right,
going to be the smooth sailing machine where everything makes sense. And unfortunately, that's not always the case.
right.
And with that comes a hostile work environment and a member feeling somewhat lost. Do you think you felt somewhat lost in the process of, is this really happening to me right now? And what was your leader's reaction to your to what you experienced?
So when I say that, like the process, as you're sitting there describing the world's greatest military, you were like, I was agreeing with you. Like we've been doing this for a couple hundred years. The military's birthday is, over 100 years old. I'm sure by now we've got some systems and processes in place where things are at least somewhat smooth. But what I was met with was more, it was more bolder than I had expected. I did not, my reaction to being away at LTC and in my training, the drill sergeants, that wasn't shocking to me. So having people cuss at me, talk to me in a certain type of way, again, nothing new to me. I understood the assignment as these people don't know me. I'm not taking any of this personal. They're here to train me in some aspect, in my mind, like everyone else. There was an expectation of how you are to behave, the things that you are to do. You kind of put your head down and you bear the storm. What I was not prepared for was that still carrying over when I finally got to my unit. Like I did my due diligence. I went through my training. I earned this. I passed my PT test. There was a level of respect that I expected just being having gotten that far. But what I found was leadership, including my commander, who made no qualms about saying things like "your parade pretty."
Oh,
Oh, yeah. I was like, I before Google, I was like, I need to go find out what that even means because you just low key just shaded me, and I don't even know what you're talking about. So just the hostility of why even say that? Why are you going out of your way to make me feel lesser than? I just got here. So there were some things that again that crossed over. I wasn't prepared for. Nothing in my life experience was about to prepare me for the things that I had to deal with from the male and female leaders when I got to Stewart.
so let's talk about that a bit because you said something specifically male and female leaders, right? And so just from you telling your story a second ago, I guess a lot of people would assume that the mistreatment or that level of hostility directed towards you as a woman came only from men. What was that like as a woman getting this type of treatment and limited respect from a fellow woman?
Oh man, I think it took me years to process it. As a matter of fact, when I left Stewart, I remember crafting an email to my commander because I wanted her to know so bad. I was like, "Oh, this is my opportunity. I'm going to shoot my shot," but not in a nasty way. I just wanted her to let her know, like, you didn't break me as hard as you tried. You didn't break me. And I never sent that email to her. I'm not even sure exactly why. I never sent that email to her, but it was the strangest thing to be standing next to more than one woman and having to, my experience as a survivor, because at that point I'm surviving. I'm trying my best to survive in my own, standing in my own truth, and to have other female leaders not only not support you, but intentionally go out of their way to try to break you. It was mind blowing and took me a long time to process. In that moment, I couldn't even tell you what I was thinking, other than I'm just angry. And
Mhm.
I wanted to, I don't know how many people are old enough to remember the show Ally McBeal, but
Mhm.
if you remember how often she stood and stared at people and just watched their heads, that was me on a regular basis in formation, just people's heads exploding around me because the sis was like, I'm gonna catch a case if I even say what is in my mind right now. And
Right.
that's that was my lived experience on a regular basis.
Right. Right. And that I'm sorry.
I'm gonna turn my light on because
Oh,
it's
you're good. Yeah. So we're talking with Dr. Deandra Poe, and we're talking about her experience as a former Army military officer and leader, and her experience with military sexual trauma. But right now, we're talking about the unfortunate and pretty common level of toxic behavior in workplaces throughout the military. And I think a lot of times we mistake the toxic overly, I don't even want to say over masculinity, because women do it too. And we do it as a way of, we're tough, we're military, suck it up. But it still causes traumatic experiences for those of us who are on the receiving end of that. So I just wanted to point that out while she turns her light on. However, so let's get into why we're here today, if you don't mind. For many years, for the 18, 19 years I've been in the military, I've been on the front lines of eradicating military sexual trauma. We train on it, we talk about it, and yet still these things are still occurring in our ranks. They're still occurring to many women out here, by people who are dressed like us, our brothers and sisters who we're supposed to trust. What do you think about just that statement from your experience? Just the fact that this is someone that you're supposed to trust.
Um, I think about the 7 core Army values and how those, um, when we think about the OERs and how when we write out our OERs or NCOERs, and those core values are at the top of the list. And, you're told, oh, if you violate any of these, but if you violate them, what happens? At the end of the day, those characteristics are supposed to be a guidance, but we know that the military is a microcosm of our larger society. So if someone is coming in with these cultural norms and societal norms that are outside of those characteristics, how can we say that we can trust, our brothers and sisters to the left or the right, except believing in the system and the things that we have in place to build that type of character? What are we doing in basic training? What are we doing in our own training, in our own modeling as military leaders, if we're not making sure that those characteristics are not just guardrails, but that is the defining, overarching goal of our men and our women? Being the most powerful military force in the world has to mean something, and it should mean something that we have the discipline, that we are the most disciplined force. And discipline, like when we're talking that type of level of discipline, to be able to hold a weapon and not just run off and kill like every person when you're in combat situations, should also mean the discipline to know that when someone tells you no, or when you are in a situation where a male or another female is doing something that you don't like, that you have the fortitude to discipline yourself to not go forward. To me, that's what I think about when I hear that.
Yeah, yeah. And unfortunately, we know that's not the case. Um, a compounded issue for sure,
Yeah.
right? We don't spend enough time on the prevention side of it, training them. When we're taught to walk differently, dress differently, talk differently in a lot of ways to fit in, but we don't put a lot of time into training about things such as this. And this expands to other things as well: domestic violence. The simple no means no. You know, discipline yourself enough to carry yourself a certain way.
Yeah.
Um,
There's the
so
piece.
I'm sorry.
There's the accountability piece too. Yeah, like holding ourselves accountable, but also holding our leaders accountable too.
Yes.
You know that someone did something wrong. They violated those core values. It should never be a question. The consequences should be swift, should be like immediate, and they should also be consistent across the board.
That's the key part, consistent.
Yeah.
That's the key part, consistent. It shouldn't be, you know, one person did it this month and this is their punishment, but another quarter there's a whole nother punishment.
Yeah.
Because that person, you know, there's a possibility that they could get away with it depending who they work for, what unit they're part of, what base they're at,
Exactly.
you know.
Rank. And their rank. Yeah.
And their rank. Yeah, I mean, you think about in 2021, right? We see that they finally passed the Vanessa Gulen Act, which is amazing, right? To take the commanders out of the process for some of these reasons, because for years we've been enduring the commander's favorite being accused of something, for example, and the commander's like, no, Johnny would never, or Jane.
Right.
We know that offenders can come in, you know, in both genders.
Right.
So that was an important step forward, I think, for the DoD in the conversation of MST. And so we hope to see other things like that. So there is change occurring. It's just unfortunately very slow.
Yeah.
And you know, it unfortunately takes a crisis for us to band together to change things like that. But anyways, I digress. We're not here for this. So we're not here for that. So your traumatic experience, as far as the military sexual trauma goes, because there's, first of all, just being in your work environment is a traumatic experience in itself.
Yes, that part too. Yeah, so a lot of people don't know that during the day, I mean, you talk about having to be in some dark places. During the day, I am a full-time therapist and I work with human trafficking survivors here in the city of Baltimore. So that's the heavy lifting during the day. And then at night, I focus on military sexual assault trauma. So yeah, heavy lifting all day long. All day long.
That's a lot. How do you take care of you know, with that?
One, I recognize that that my help comes from above. Like I make no qualms that it's not by my strength or my might at all that I'm able to do what I do. So my faith is a huge part of me being able to do this. There is no Deandra, and if I remove God from the situation, so every single day, I have to be filled with the ability to do this. Because if I just try to do it on my own strength or my own knowledge, I'll fail every single time. So I acknowledge that you know, this work that I do is extremely taxing, but I'm also very purposeful in this moment. A year ago, 2 years ago, even 3 months ago, after I lost my mom, you wouldn't even have been able to tell me that I would be able to do what I'm doing right now in this space. So I am purposeful about my own mental health and making sure that I take time out to not just like say me time is getting my nails done, because that's I have to get my nails done anyway. People go,
that's a necessity.
It's like saying me time is taking a shower. Girl, you need to do that anyway. So
right.
That's not me time. Me time is purposeful, it's intentional, and it's implementing things that bring me joy. So Sundays are my, my me time, and I'm off limits to everybody except for those that are close to me. So you're not in my inner circle. Sorry, you won't find me until Monday through Saturday.
So you know what? I do the same thing on Sundays, and people get really upset, like, "Oh my God, it's just one day." No, okay, that day is for family and God, and
Yeah.
maybe my dog, right? But that is it. And you have to be purposeful and intentional with this to decompress, because what you do on a daily basis, it's a lot. And to have, also endured your own traumas as well, you still have to heal through that daily, as you're doing this. So kudos to you for what it is that you're doing. My deacon always says, don't waste your pain. And so I think if he hears the story, he'll agree that you've taken your pain, and turned it into something productive and purposeful, to help others, who may have suffered something as well. So
Thank you.
kudos to you for that. Okay, so we're going to go back to how you even, decided to, well, first, how you experienced that, assault, and what you did after to ensure that you stood up for yourself in that process.
So, just so everyone has a timeline, I got to Stewart in December of 2011. I went through my own processing in December 2011. Not even 90 days after being at Stewart, the officer who in process with me, who presents himself as an ally, as a friend, someone who would be there to help me through this process, when my children arrived and everything, assaulted me in my home while my children were asleep. It took me months to come forward. Again, in my mind, I am like, I have lived experience. I should know better. However, the intimidation, the retaliation, the idea of coming forward was so stifling. Um, I didn't know where to go or who to report to, because in ROTC, we didn't talk about that. You get this like overview of what to do if you need to report. All that stuff goes out the window. And let me tell you something, I didn't learn about flight, fight, or freeze until I was in social work. Just understanding the reaction that I was having or why I didn't come forward, all those things that they were bringing up during my trial. I'm just like, I need to do some research because people were throwing out terms and accusing me of things, and I have no idea. So here I am, not even, the Velcro is, barely worn out on my uniform before I'm having to navigate the fight of my life. And then what propelled me to come forward was actually my daughter, who was being bullied at the time. And as I'm standing there telling my daughter that, she has to stand up for herself and be confident in who she is, as this young man is bothering her, I'm hearing in my own internal voice tell me, you need to stand up for yourself. And I had this moment where I was like, I cannot sit here and tell my daughter to be confident and, stand up for herself if I was not willing to do the same thing.
Mhm.
So after some, deep prayer and just talking with family who wore the uniform, I came forward and I was like, I'm going to be brave. And I thought, absolutely, I'm going to be brave and I'm going to tell my story. No, it didn't go down that way. It got worse, to the point that I then had to be moved from Fort Stewart to Fort Hood. I was like, oh, now mind you, I didn't know anything about Fort Hood. So didn't know that I jumped out of the pan and into the
Into
fire.
the whole fire.
Literally, out of the pan and into the fire. Here, I thought I was going to Hood for my safety, and I literally walked right into the prostitution ring at Sharp. I walked into a shooting.
So
Yeah.
we're gonna pray for Hood because they have a reputation that precedes them. And we can figure out what's going on there. However, let's go back to Fort Stewart for a second. So you decided to be brave. Kudos to you. Set
Mhm.
that example for your daughter. What was your, uh your coworkers, these same people, right, that you worked with this entire time, 3 months, which is not a long time, what was their initial reaction when you came forward?
So my commander testified against me at my trial. Female commander. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
Although I did not get to stay in the room with her, I was whisked away as everyone made their own. My understanding, she testified against my character because she said that I didn't act like I had been traumatized or act like an assault had happened.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, I was not believable. Um, and then to me, that again, I was just like, how am I supposed to act? I have 3 children. There was no denying what happened. Evidence proved that. There was no denying that part. But there was this thing of, again, I'm hearing people say things and I'm like, what does all of this mean? As I'm like, yeah, something tragic happened to me and I'm not responding the way that she would want or he would want or they would want. Um, and believe you me, I had my moments. There were things that I was doing that I didn't even realize were traumatic responses. My relationships, my children, the security of my home, all of that was happening without me even realizing that it was connected to what was going on.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it was crazy when I left. They had a hail and farewell. My commander refused to write my OER, and when I tell you that hail and farewell was probably one of the worst experiences I had there outside of what happened in terms of social interactions and the people. I couldn't tell you, I don't think there was a single person that I stayed connected with at Fort Hood. I mean, at Stewart, not a single soldier.
Wow. Wow. Um, you know, you would think at this point in time we are past the, you know, she was wearing the wrong thing or she doesn't act like a victim mentality, but especially when it's coming from someone in a position of leadership, a person that is designated to protect you, and we hope that has more experience, has been trained a bit on certain of these things. It has to hurt coming from someone like that. But more importantly, this took place in your safe space, in your home with your children right there. I don't even know how to even talk about that part
Yeah.
because that's, I don't even know how to, what goes through someone's mind in a process like that with your children so close by.
Um, as I remember telling them, I think my first initial thought was if my son wakes up and he does something to my child, this trial would be completely different.
Mhm.
The mother in me wanted to protect them from whatever, either seeing it, being a part of it, or being hurt. My
Mhm.
motherly instinct overtook my own need to be safe. And the only thing I could think of is, please, God, don't let them wake up. Don't let them hear what's going on.
Mhm.
Because I have no idea. Like, I think about my motherly instinct and the things that I would do consciously
Mhm.
to protect my children. I have no idea what I would have done unconsciously. Like I
Mhm.
said, this trial would have been completely different
Mhm.
had my child awakened, my daughter. That was
Yeah.
the only thing going through my mind. As of course I was put on trial. Why didn't you scream? All of the common classic questions that a defense attorney would stickingly ask. Why
Yeah.
didn't you scream or fight? And I tried my best to keep my candor up
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. So this member works with you, right? So at this point now, your unit is basically split, right?
Mhm.
They have to supposedly choose sides, and that has to be hard. What about this member? I know they moved you, but what were you going through before they moved you? Did you still have to work around him? Did they separate you guys temporarily?
So he was a part of a completely different unit. Um, so I didn't. and he was on main post. My understanding is I think they moved him to another post. If
Mm-hmm.
anybody's been to Stewart, you already know that it's dead smack in the middle, like most military bases, in nowhere. Unless you are at Hood, where you have Colleen, if you call Colleen somewhere. That's pretty much what you're where most military bases are. They're just like dead smack in the middle of like
Nothing.
a nothing. So the
Mm-hmm.
the next biggest town is usually where. But for Stewart, there is no next biggest town unless you're talking about Savannah, which is still like 45 minutes away at the very least. So there's nowhere to go. I had run into this person several times out in public. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it was distressing to say the least. It changed my mentality of leaving, never without by myself,
Yeah.
always with my children. Um, and I've had a few friends and everything, so very few. It's funny because when you said, now that I think about it, I do have two people, two females that came to Stewart after incident. That I still am in touch with. One of them who's a really, really good friend of mine.
Yeah.
He's doing amazing things. So I want to say, but they were not a part of my unit. They were completely separate units.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're in this unit, and basically you have nobody there supporting you, right?
No,
Because now you're on trial at unit as well, right? Even before the trial, you're on trial once you decide to come public with the story about this other member.
correct.
So, what was their decision point to move you? Was it to protect you from seeing this person in Nowhere Stewart? Because you're going to run into each other at Walmart, right? There's nothing there. So, was that the point? And did you have a say in that for your move?
So no, I didn't have a say in where. However, the decision to move me came because of my safety. So this gentleman broke into my home. So after the break-in and me having to, and that also was forcibly. So remember, I said I came forward after telling my daughter. I went restricted. I did not come
Mm,
forward and tell anybody. I told my story to somebody, but it was on the premise that no one would know, and I just want to get help.
yeah.
I was one of those restricted reporting.
Yeah.
It was only after the break-in that I was then forced to come forward because the MPs told me that unless I was willing to tell them who did it, I couldn't get my locks changed and I couldn't file a report.
I don't think that's a thing.
Yeah, Stewart. It's a thing at Stewart for sure.
Yeah, I don't think that's a thing, but okay. So basically you were forced to go unrestricted then to
Correct.
change your reporting option, which is a huge violation, to get some locks changed.
Yep.
Okay, fine. So they change your locks, and now you have to go through this story. They decide to move you to Fort Hood. Let's talk about that. What was the expectation of you moving to Hood? A clean slate, maybe, a starting over, or
Awaiting trial. So again, as all this evidence was building up of everything that was going on, including the break-in and everything else, the expectation that I was going to go there to await trial. And I have to say, when I got to Stewart, I was with the 36 engineers. That was probably the only positive experience I ever had in the military. Shout out to
wow.
my commanders at 36 Engineer Brigade because I think their response to what was going on to me. Now, mind you, there were some things that was going on behind the scenes, and they did. I want to say that the commander at the time of the 36th Engineer Brigade, I cannot remember his name for the life of me. Sorry, but he took care of me. There was no one that knew what was going on that didn't need to know, and
Mm-hmm.
I respected him for that. He
Mm-hmm.
protected me. It hurt me come time for promotion because the promotion board doesn't understand why I don't have a lot of this growth and was being kept from deploying or doing certain assignments because I was awaiting trial. He shielded me.
Mm-hmm.
So when I got skipped over for promotion, he took that 1 star and was like, "Yeah, no, you're not about to do this," and explained to the board why they needed to promote me to captain. at that
Mm-hmm.
point, and I respect him. That is the type of leadership that needs to be duplicated over and over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think he saw that I was trying to heal and I was trying to make it despite everything that was being thrown at me. So when I was taken from the 36 engineers and thrown in the cave,
The game changed.
oh, I'd give anything to go back to the engineers. I was like, yeah, what?
Yeah.
I
How
was not
long was
ready
this
for
waiting
that.
process for you?
2 years to trial.
Wow. Okay, so okay, well, listen, this is not a 3 month thing we're talking about here. So
No.
2 years of your life, because you can't really move forward, right, while you're waiting on trial. And the trial is really gonna just bring up everything from like day one all over again. So what do you do in this 2 years? What's happening with your husband at the time, your children, with you? What's happening in this 2 year waiting process?
So I was not married at the time of my trial.
Okay.
I was my ex-husband, my husband. I got rid of him before, when I commissioned in 2011. I got rid of him before I commissioned. Um, so I between the time 2012 when I came forward to 2000 July of 2014 when I went to trial, there was just a lot of, okay, we're going to trial, let's set a date, and then something happens. So what happened in between that two trials was this man couldn't not stop assaulting people. So I was not the only person. So
Oh,
they were just mounting evidence. And I unfortunately was collateral damage, like other people, in the process of getting to this trial. So he was misbehaving all the way around. I don't know if he saw the writing on the wall and was like, screw it, or he just, mentally has problems. In my estimate, he has problems. I mean, why else would you do what you do or do what you did?
right.
Um, so that in the process, I had gotten orders to go to Korea, was denied. I was supposed to deploy with the engineers, denied twice. No overnight field exercises. The shooting happened, and I was like mandatory that I go to mental health because of it. So, and then the sex ring, mandatory mental health. There was just all this stuff that was happening in between those 2 years. And oh, by the way, they subpoenaed my children to testify as well.
Wow.
My 9-year-old daughter
Wow.
and my two teenage boys.
As a mother, to just watch them even have to go through being served with a subpoena.
Yeah.
What do you say to that?
Well, that was me, BC, before Christ. So just know that there was some choice words, things that came out of my mouth that I am not too proud of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I gave them people the skull dragging of their life
Yeah.
over the phone, and they knew I was not all too happy at all.
Yeah.
Having to, mind you, my children up until the subpoena, probably maybe like 2 weeks before the trial, had not known anything that had happened. I did not tell my children. So now to forcibly have to get a social worker involved and really explain to my children what this is way before I wanted my 9-year-old daughter to understand
Hmm.
what that was even was. Oh, I was hotter than fish grease.
Yeah. I can imagine. Is that like a mandatory thing because they were in the home? I don't understand what's the purpose of dragging children through this, knowing that they weren't aware of the circumstances.
The defense's reason was because they wanted to prove that he was nice to my children and his character. I was like, he didn't assault my children.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
and it failed. He was convicted and served 5 years.
So this member, okay, is out here. You're not, unfortunately, you're not the only person that this person has done something to that they shouldn't have done. So, and all this has taken place as you're awaiting trial.
Mm.
Is this member still serving?
Oh yeah.
at the time. Still, now he can go deploy. Can he still go do everything full latitude while you wait?
I'm not sure if he was deployable, but he definitely wore a uniform and went to work every day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In what capacity, I have no idea, because that's the Army's response is let's just move him from one unit to another.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel at any time that during this waiting period, did any time of it feel like a punishment of sorts for you?
Oh, absolutely. Being denied my career because again, I was intentional about my healing. I mean, I was going to my mental health appointments. The captain that was treating me introduced me to a therapy modality that I use right now to help my survivors of human trafficking. And my God, if it wasn't for her, you talk about full circle. An intentionality, just love the way that God brings things back around to you and turned my pain into purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Had it not been for her in that introduction, I probably wouldn't be where I am today and still being able to use that. But boy, I don't think a crab knows that they're sitting in the boiling water until things start to feel and look different. The whole time that you're sitting in it, you're just like, um, this has got to work out for my good
Yeah.
somehow. But when you're sitting in those valleys, absolutely did not feel good at all because I've got people judging me about missing deployments. I've got my peers looking at me like I'm being favored, parade pretty. What am I doing? Who am I doing? Type of things to get out of these assignments and all these exercises, and they have no idea,
Yeah.
and you can't say anything to them.
Yeah. Yeah, but you know what though? In a sense, they didn't have any idea, so you had to struggle through that, missing a promotion or passed over for a promotion, not being able to do as your peers, and they're judging you, especially because you're now labeled parade pretty. That's an unfortunate thing with a woman. But in the meantime, what I do like that you said is that you had a commanding officer that protected you, because it wasn't in their business to know, and that had to give you a certain sense of peace as well, right? To know that your story wasn't out here for everyone else to form an opinion about it as well. What do you think
Yeah,
about that?
it was like I said. I think that the he should not be the exception to the rule.
Mm-hmm.
He should be the standard to the rule, the standard.
Yeah.
And it's so unfortunate that it's like again we can't like wash, rinse, and repeat that type of
Mm-hmm.
leadership throughout because on the same post under the same three corps commander, you got very different leadership. So I go
Mm-hmm.
from the engineers who understood what was supposed to happen to Cav who just doesn't give a
Yeah. Night and day difference.
oh, like the other it like literally Cav is like that land that Mufasa told Simba not to touch. Like you see that over there, we don't go over
Don't go over there.
don't go over there. We ain't even talk about Colleen anymore. We're literally still one post, and we're like that dark clouded spot over there where all the bones in the yard. Yeah, that's Cav. Don't go over
Wow,
there.
that's wild. So 2 years. All right. So these 2 years go by, and then it's time for the trial.
Mhm.
What is this experience like, real time, going through this experience in uniform still?
5 days right before 4th of July. Sorry, my cat is like, it's showtime for me too.
Yeah.
I'm about to come into the camera. Um,
we have had quite a few guest appearances, but never a cat. Hi.
yeah, his name is Kane. My cat's names are Kane and Abel.
Oh, that
I'll
is too. That's a whole other story.
yes. But 5 days, I have to go back to Stewart to the trial. So I'm at Hood. I'm now in Cav. So I'm actively in Cal. 4th of July weekend or right before 4th of July weekend. No, I'm sorry, right after 4th of July weekend. And it was nerve wracking. I started having symptoms of PTSD, completely unaware what was going on. Lucid dreams, my husband at the time could not was like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to help you. Um, it wasn't panic attacks. It was just more like these dreams and nightmares, not being able to sleep. it was haunting me. And that was probably the first time that I had a physical reaction to my trauma leading up to the trial. The day of the trial was just as equally as nerve wracking. Done and over with, he's convicted. And I want to tell you the most poignant thing that happened to me afterwards was I had 3 privates come up to me after my trial. And they said, "Ma'am, we've never seen an officer come forward." And they were like,
Wow.
I'm really happy that you did. And I've said it so many times before, but in that very moment, I never felt so empowered and so incredibly alone because they said, "We have never." Mind
Mhm.
you, they're privates. They've not been in the military that long. I think one of them was a specialist, actually. But for them to say never, I was like, so either I'm the only one or I'm the first one.
Mhm.
And it hit me like a ton of bricks. And that's when I started doing the work that I'm doing right now. Like in my
Mhm.
mind, I was like, as I was sitting there waiting for the verdict, I was like, I have to do something.
Mhm. So after the trial, five long gruesome days, children subpoenaed 5 days. What was your decision point at that point? So you talked to these privates and specialists that says I've never seen an officer come forward, which is pretty rare actually, even on the air side as well. So what then is your decision? Are you going to stay in the army and continue to serve and lead in this toxic environment and change this world? Or are you going to get out and do something different?
Oh no, I'm definitely staying in. My goal was like, I'm definitely, I want to be a SARC. I was like, I need to, where's EO? Sign me up. Put me in, coach. Like I was ready to rock and roll. I wanted to go forward with, getting the help that I needed. I was, kind of going with the adage, pull myself up by my bootstraps. Um, Found myself a church home, was deeply embedded in my community, and doing work outside of that. But I wanted to do the work in and out of uniform. So I definitely wanted to stay in. As a matter of fact, I had to report to work that Monday.
Oh,
No
wow.
time off. Yeah, no, leadership was like, good for you. You got a conviction. Monday morning, we have troops that need to go out.
Wow. One thing about the army, y'all are cold blooded. That is cold.
That Monday, I have reported back to work. Wasn't given no time off, nothing. Nothing.
That's wild. That's wild. And what are your children experience at the end of this 5 day?
Um, for my daughter, it became inward. Her internalizing a lot of it. She became super protective of me. She started sleeping with me. Um, I think my daughter slept in my bed up until my husband came and moved in because my husband was stationed in Hawaii at the time. My daughter slept in my bed until my husband was able to live with us.
Mm-hmm.
So for her, it was there's no way I'm letting you sleep alone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
My son took on this role of I'm the man of the house. He still thinks he is.
Because they're trying to protect you from what could happen again.
Right.
Yeah.
And my middle son Joshua. So my son Joshua is on the autistic spectrum. Joshua is completely different in how he deals with emotions and things like that are wildly different. Which is another reason why I was so protective because I was like,
Mm-hmm.
if you cause any type of emotional harm to my son,
Yeah.
there won't be enough earth between you and I.
Yeah. Yeah.
The hell that I will move to
Yeah.
get to you for causing harm to my child was my mentality.
Yeah. No,
Um,
I
so
get it.
that's what I had to deal with in the aftermath of it, and I don't think people take into consideration that the domino effect, the second and third order effects of trauma, when it comes to children, even if they're not the ones that experience it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They have to live with this as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So all this happens. You go back to work on that Monday, which is crazy, crazy. So you go back to work on Monday, and how do you start to rebuild from there?
Focus. I'm the type of person that I responded to trauma by being busy, which is a trauma response.
Yes, it is.
Just be busy.
Mm-hmm.
So as long as I was busy, and I was, I was a first lieutenant sitting in a lieutenant colonel and a major slot.
Wow.
I was working at the division, so I wasn't even at a company. I didn't take command. I wasn't a platoon leader. I was hardly a platoon leader when I was at the 36 Engineers. I went from like barely being a platoon leader to the XO to CAV to being at division level,
Yeah.
running the DTO. So I was always busy and dealing with a lot of lieutenant colonels, majors, people that have been in, and for the most part, most of them were like my age. Again, I'm over 30, so
Mm-hmm.
I've got superiors that are the same age as me. So again, the respect level was a little bit different. For
Mm-hmm.
some of them, they understood that I was their same age, but just my rank was different. So there
Mm-hmm.
was some respect, and then there was others that I thought that they were raised by wolves. They mama just she needs help too. So I welcome them to come sit on my couch. I just welcome they and their mama to come sit on my couch.
Oh, not their moms
Yeah,
too.
they and their mama to come sit on my couch. So yeah, that was my experience, just going back in, and my trauma response was to keep busy until I wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did not have my first PTSD symptom until 2015. 2015. We're talking 4 years after my assault
Mm-hmm.
that I had my very first panic attack while I was in training.
Mm.
And my leader's response was to write me up for conduct unbecoming of an officer.
Mm-hmm. So this is years later, 4 years later.
Mhm.
Okay, so you have this now. So you're almost being re-traumatized to a sense. You have to figure out what's going on with you. Walk us through that experience.
I called it the crumb. CRUMB. Can't really understand my body right now. I was like, I don't know what's going on. When I had my panic attack while I was training, it was out of body. It was otherworldly. I had no idea. I thought I was going to die. I couldn't stop crying. My heart was racing. I was like, I am going to physically lose my life right here. And I had another major who was sitting there with me the whole entire time, trying to calm me down, as they were trying to prepare to send me back. I didn't know why I had the reaction, other than someone was in my talk that looked exactly like my perpetrator. And that set me off. And from there, it just got worse and worse and worse. And because my leaders responded the way they did, and I'm sitting there like, I don't even know what's going on to even tell you why. Again, the re traumatization, the
Mm-hmm.
re victimization, the retaliation. So now I'm being told that I'm broken. You can't be in the army broken. There was no covering. There weren't leaders coming to me to say, let's protect you at all costs because you've done, really good work. They weren't looking at that. They certainly weren't looking at me. They wasn't ready to save my career, not as a victim. Now, had I been the perpetrator, it might have been a completely different story.
Mm-hmm.
But as a victim, no, you're too broken.
Mm-hmm.
So began the process of med boarding me and telling me that I needed to get out.
Mm-hmm. So that sounds like it's like laced with shame almost,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I did nothing wrong, but I'm not good enough,
Yeah.
right? So they decide that a med board is the best thing for you. Do you decide, you know what, it's time? Let me just count my losses and go our separate ways?
Not immediately. I'm a fighter.
Mm-hmm.
The fastest way to tell me I can't do something or to get me to do something, tell me I can't. So
Yep.
as soon as you're like, you can't do this, I hold my beer. I sure will.
Right.
Um, I was like, no, ma'am, I'm not leaving. I've worked really, really hard, and I broke some barriers for myself, my family, some generational curses that I intend to break. So no, I didn't go down without swinging at all. Uh, it took a couple of months. I think they started the process in February, maybe, um, of 2016.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't take them long to put me out because my terminal leave and me ending my last day of service was November 23rd, 2016.
Wow. Yeah, that is quick. That is quick because sometimes med boards take years. You hear like
Yeah,
2 years later. I thought you were med boarded. Like, so why was yours specifically so quick?
probably because I went all the way up to DODIG and was
Oh
like,
yes, they was like, we got to get rid of her.
oh yeah, no, because I bring receipts because I had receipts.
Oh yeah, they were like, she got to go.
I had emails and text messages from leaders.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't
yeah,
delete anything.
yeah,
I'm kind of like Apple. Ain't nothing. It's the internet. Ain't nothing going forever. Not when you communicate with me. So just be
yeah,
careful.
yeah. So at that point, now you become a threat,
Yeah.
right? So now they got to get rid of you because you're gonna bring shame to. You're still a hood at this time, right?
Mhm.
Which you would think I'm not even gonna go there. But so you're a hood, and
Mhm.
they're like, we got to get rid of you, and we're gonna process you. So you go through the med board process, and in November, um, they finally decided that you are going to exit the front gate, no
Mhm.
longer a military member. However, you're still a spouse,
Mhm.
right? So you're still connected. They really didn't close any doors, really, right? You still have same full access. What do
Mhm.
you do from there?
Um, Believe it or not, I that was one of my valleys. So true story. I was originally working on my master's degree when I was in the military for emergency management services. However, I started to feel a pull somewhere, through the med board process. And the day before I was to go on terminal leave, November 22nd, I saw one of my leaders in the hospital that was just absolutely horrid to me. To the point that her and I, like, literally were going to come to like hand to hand combat. I was going to fight her. I saw her. I wanted to chase her down in the airport, I mean, in the hospital. And as I was walking with my social worker about next steps for me, she saw me shaking. And out of my mouth, I told her, like, I will give it all up just to fight her. Like, I said some things that warranted them to take me to the emergency room. And I found myself sitting in the emergency room, tied to the bed, and my social worker asking me questions. She asked everybody else in the room to leave, and she had a conversation with me about my pain and my purpose. If it had not been for that social worker, I don't know where I would be. I have no idea. But because of her and her discernment or whatever it is that she saw in me that day, she told them to let me go.
Wow.
And from that day, I went home. I spiraled. I ate a lot. I gained a lot of weight. And somewhere in January, I said, absolutely not. And I enrolled in a master's program to get my social work at University of Texas, Arlington,
Yeah.
trauma response. Keep myself busy.
Yeah.
But I had no idea the journey I was about to go on. In my
Hmm.
head, it was a trauma response. I need to keep myself busy. Um, but I always joke that we can tell like God what we're gonna do. Like this is my plan, and He just laughs and is like, "Ha ha."
Hmm.
You know.
Hmm.
And then from there, it just I really started focusing on Glass Soldier and my nonprofit and my organization.
Hmm. So that social worker really saved you in a lot of ways. They could have locked you up
Oh, I
because
was
you
going to the fifth
basically
floor.
snapped.
I was going to the fifth floor for real. Like brother man, fifth floor.
Right. They was about to lock you up,
Yeah.
but she could probably see your pain
Mm-hmm.
and your trauma, the things that you've been through. And what is it like though, throughout this entire process, when somebody, anybody sees you?
I think that's what a lot of people that have bore this pain, they want to be seen and they want to be heard. And in my experience with survivors, whether it's domestic violence, trafficking, sexual assault, the one place that they normally describe their pain is in their throat.
Mm.
I have no voice. They tell me they feel it in their pain or in their chest. That's that's them saying I have no voice.
Mm-hmm.
They want to be heard.
Mm-hmm.
They want to be seen. They want to know that they can walk in their truth. And I appreciated that social worker for her recognizing that without even asking me a lot of these questions that I ask some of mine, without even going through all that.
Mm-hmm.
She inspired me. I want to be like that. I want to be that level of connected to people to be able to know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you're well on your way. So, I mean, your story, though unfortunate, has turned into some phenomenal things. And so, tell us about the work that you're doing now and your nonprofit as well.
So yes, and again, like right after my trial, Glass Soldier kind of came to me in a way of you need to be able to do something. I was still in uniform at the time, so again, I just was like jotting down ideas. I had no idea where this was going to go, and keeping those notes. I told you I keep receipts. I keep a lot of stuff. I can go back really, really far in my Gmail to just this whole thing being got out, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it when I get my master's degree, and I'm a social worker. And I just kept putting things off, and I was getting beat on the back of the head with this idea. But in 2020, now mind you, I graduated with my master's in 2019, but my crazy self went right into my doctoral
Of
program.
course.
I did. I was like, I graduated in like August. I'm snowballing it here, but I was like, I graduated August like 15th, and then August 22nd, I started my doctoral program. I had like a week off.
Oh, wow.
But I was like, you know what, D, you need to go. You're a little older. You gotta go while the pistons are still firing in your brain. Because this locomotive is once I get going, if I slow down, I'm
That's it.
all
Mm-hmm.
aboard or all off. That's
Mm-hmm.
kind of me. So in 2020, I officially got with my son, my oldest, who is my CEO. And it's amazing working with him, and for him to be a part of this process, because he was a part of the journey.
Mm-hmm.
Who better to be able to communicate my story than not a stranger, but someone who's a part of it and can really understand the vision. We formed Glass Soldier in 2020. And from there, our mission has always been the elimination of sexual assault. I settle for nothing less. It's possible. The
Yeah.
elimination of sexual assault through social innovation. So combining tech with heart, combining accountability with collaboration, and transparency with data. That's Glass Soldier.
That's amazing. And it's one of a kind too, because we usually look at those industries, like you said, combining tech and heart, we look at them separately. Why couldn't we use them to collaborate together to, as you say, eradicate sexual trauma, and military or not, right? So kudos to you and your son as well. I'm so glad you guys get to both use this as a healing portion of the journey after experiencing something so unfortunate and horrid. So this is a time in the podcast where I usually ask all my guests to mentor our listeners out there, and whether it's military sexual trauma or any other type of uh, trauma that they have experienced in the military while wearing uniform. What advice would you give to those women who have experienced trauma and or women who are supporting those women?
So for those who are out there currently, thriving or surviving, whatever mode that you're in, if you're still surviving and going through the day to day, know that you're not alone. I know it often feels like no one will understand, and it's difficult to pick up the phone and ask for help. Sometimes it's, when people are reaching out to you and they're saying, "Oh, I was just calling to check in on you." They're probably calling in to check in with themselves. And sometimes it's very difficult to just say, I need help. So I would encourage those that are surviving to find the moment, go from moment to moment. That's what for me, it was going moment to moment. I didn't have day to day sometimes. I didn't even have hour to hour. There would be times when I was like, Lord, just get me to the next 5 minutes. And I would set a timer, or I would go and do something to get me through the next moment, whatever that moment is for you. Uh, and I encourage you, go moment to moment. And then you can get to the thriving part where it's day to day. And for those women that are responding to busyness and responding to keeping themselves distracted, just be intentional about your mental health and your me time. Do something that literally brings you joy, that makes you belly laugh, that makes you pause, that makes you feel purposeful, whatever that looks like. I don't care if it's knitting or walking. Random Act of Kindness Day is coming up on the 17th of February. Do something for someone else. If that's what brings you joy, then do that. Do something healthy, of course, because there are some unhealthy things, but that's what I would say to them and encourage them, and find somebody that can pour into you for sure.
I realize I'm still on mute, but words of wisdom that we can all use and live by. Dr. Deandra Poe, where can we find you to support the Glassdoor Initiative?
Oh, everywhere. I'm on every social media there is. I am so funny story. I'm creating a TikTok, bruh.
Let me know when you figure it out so then I can learn.
I have my own personal one, but I haven't created one for Glass Soldier yet, but it's coming. But we are literally on Twitter, we're on Instagram, Facebook. We have our own website. You can go to www.glasssoldier.org, and you'll find all of our information there about what we're doing. You can volunteer. We definitely need all branches. Right now, I have the Army and the Marines represented in our organization, but we do not represent just the Army and the Marines. Every branch, it's in our logo. We try to pull every piece of every branch into our logo, except for the Space Force. We getting around to y'all. I'm just saying, we're getting around to the Space Force.
Don't fall asleep on the Space Force. They're changing the world to
I
infinity and
know.
beyond.
Out to infinity. I get it. And we might put like a Buzz Lightyear reference in there for Space Wars or something. I don't we're gonna pull y'all in eventually. I know we'll throw a star in there. But I digress. We do represent every branch, and we are looking for volunteers. Now, mind you, for those that are still currently serving, our advisory board is all anonymous. Your name is not on our website. You can confidentially advise us on your branch and what we should be doing in the Air Force, in the Navy, in the Marines, in the Coast Guard, in the Space Force, without ever your leadership ever having to know that you are a part of this organization. So for those that are actively serving, if you don't care, by all means, I will throw your name up on a website and I will show you support and love and give you all the tools that you need to go out there and be an amazing advocate. But absolutely, we would love to get all branches as a part of this organization so that we can. Collaboration is key. It truly is.
And we'll make sure that we post that information on social media and then the podcast websites as well. So you can connect with her in support of this amazing initiative of the Glassdoor organization. So, Dr. Deandra Poe, it's been a great conversation. And I'm so excited that you joined us today to share your story of survival and resiliency. And you've done it with grace and class and style and a little bit of humor. And And this is what thriving really looks like. I'm so happy to see you doing well, and I wish you the very best. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
All right, y'all. Until next time, bye bye. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. You can find us on the book, IG, or Twitter. Email us your stories to camobeautystories@gmail.com. That's it for me, y'all. Until next time, be kind to your body, soul, and mind.